Tonight, I want you to imagine something very simple, yet deeply symbolic. A place where everything you cannot see begins to gather. Stress from the day, emotional heaviness, silent frustration, and thoughts that cling like dust. Many people carry this invisible weight without realizing how much it affects their mind and peace. Now consider a small act. Something ordinary. Something found in every home. Salt. Not as magic. Not as superstition. But as a symbol of purification, intention, and release. When you place salt in water and allow it to flow into the toilet, you are not casting a spell. You are creating a moment of awareness. A quiet decision that says, I am ready to let go. Letting go of anger that stayed too long. Letting go of thoughts that keep repeating pain. Letting go of emotional residue that no longer belongs in your present moment. In wisdom traditions across time, cleansing rituals were never about changing the outside world instantly. They were about changing the inside first. Because when a mind is heavy, even small problems feel like mountains. But when the mind is light, even old burdens lose their grip. So, tonight, if you choose to do this simple act, do it with awareness. Stand still for a moment. Breathe slowly. And as the salt flows, remind yourself, I release what I cannot carry anymore. Not because something magical is happening outside, but because something powerful is shifting within you. Peace does not arrive loudly. It comes quietly when you stop holding on to what hurts. And in that silence, you may notice something surprising. Not that the world has changed instantly, but that you have. That is the real cleansing. The speech focuses on emotional and mental cleansing rather than literal or magical effects, using salt as a symbolic tool for release. The first key idea of the speech is that the entire practice is centered around emotional and mental cleansing rather than any literal or supernatural effect. It uses salt not as a mystical force, but as a symbol that helps the mind understand the process of letting go. Human beings often struggle with invisible burdens, stress from daily life, unresolved emotions, anger that was never expressed properly, and memories that quietly repeat in the background of thought. Over time, these inner impressions create heaviness that affects how a person thinks, reacts, and even perceives the world. The use of salt in water represents a simple, physical reminder that release is possible. Just as salt dissolves and disappears into water, negative emotions can also dissolve when they are consciously acknowledged and released. The act itself is not powerful because of the material, but because of the awareness behind it. When a person performs such a ritual with intention, it becomes a moment of pause, where the mind shifts from unconscious carrying of stress to conscious letting go. This perspective teaches that transformation begins within, not outside. The real cleansing happens in awareness, where thoughts lose their grip and the mind becomes lighter, clearer, and more peaceful. It explains that everyday stress, anger, and negative thoughts accumulate like invisible emotional weight that affects inner peace. The second key idea explains how human beings gradually collect invisible emotional weight throughout their daily lives. Unlike physical objects, these burdens cannot be seen, yet they strongly influence thoughts, behavior, and inner stability. Every day, a person experiences small moments of stress, unspoken anger, disappointment, worry about the future, regret about the past, or even silent comparisons with others. At first, these emotions may seem minor and easy to ignore, but when they're not processed or released, they begin to accumulate within a mind. Over time, this accumulation creates a sense of heaviness that feels like something is always pressing inward, even during ordinary moments. A person may not realize why they feel tired without physical effort, or why peace feels distant even in calm environments. The speech compares this condition to invisible dust gathering in a hidden place, slowly affecting the quality of everything around it. The important insight is that this burden is not permanent or fixed. It is created through repeated holding on to thoughts, reactions, and emotional residue. Once a person becomes aware of this process, They begin to understand that much of their suffering is not caused by external events alone, but by internal retention. Awareness becomes the first step toward release, allowing the mind to loosen its grip and gradually return to clarity and ease. The act of putting salt in water is presented as a mindful ritual meant to represent letting go of past burdens and emotional clutter. The third key idea focuses on the symbolic act of using salt in water as a mindful reminder of release and emotional cleansing. The speech does not treat this as a supernatural solution, but as a simple physical gesture that helps the mind shift into a state of awareness. When a person places salt into water, it naturally dissolves and disappears, becoming part of the whole without resistance. This natural process becomes a reflection of what should happen internally with negative thoughts and emotional weight. Instead of holding on to anger, regret, or anxiety, the mind is encouraged to allow these feelings to dissolve gently through conscious attention. The act of doing something physical creates a pause in the mental noise, giving space for reflection. In that moment, a person can recognize what they are carrying emotionally and make a quiet decision to release it. The importance lies not in the object itself, but in the intention behind the action. It becomes a reminder that letting go is possible at any moment, and that peace is not dependent on external circumstances. Through this symbolic practice, the mind learns that clarity comes when resistance is reduced and emotional flow is restored. It teaches that even simple actions, when done with awareness, can help shift inner state from heaviness to lightness. It emphasizes that true purification comes from inner awareness and intention, not from external or supernatural changes. The fourth key idea explains that true purification is not about changing the outside world, but about transforming the inner state of awareness. Many people search for peace by trying to control external situations, believing that once circumstances improve, their mind will automatically become calm. However, the speech emphasizes a different understanding. Real change begins from within. External actions, such as the symbolic use of salt and water, only serve as reminders to turn inward. The real work happens in the mind, where thoughts, emotions, and reactions are observed without attachment. When a person becomes aware of their inner state, they begin to see how much of their suffering is created by holding on to negativity. This awareness allows space for a different response, one of release instead of resistance. The idea is that peace is not something that arrives from the outside, but something that emerges when inner tension is reduced. Just as still water becomes clear, a calm mind reflects reality without distortion. The practice described in the speech encourages this shift in perception. It teaches that purification is not a one-time event, but a continuous process of noticing, releasing, and returning to balance. In this way, even simple symbolic actions can guide a person toward deeper inner clarity and emotional freedom. The central message is that peace is achieved when a person releases attachment to pain, leading to an inner transformation rather than an instant external miracle. The fifth key idea brings the message of the entire speech into a deeper understanding of inner transformation. It explains that peace is not something dramatic or sudden, but something that unfolds quietly when a person stops holding on to emotional pain. Many individuals expect change to come through external events, yet true change often happens in silence, through small shifts in awareness. When negative thoughts are no longer fed with attention, they slowly lose their strength. When anger is not repeated in the mind, it begins to fade. When fear is observed instead of resisted, it becomes less powerful. The speech highlights that this process is natural, like a burden being set down after a long journey. The symbolic act of cleansing with salt and water is only a reminder of this inner truth. It points toward the idea that liberation comes from understanding, not force. A calm mind is not created by controlling everything outside, but by releasing everything unnecessary inside. In this state, even old memories lose their weight, and the present moment becomes lighter and clearer. The teaching ultimately guides the listener towards self-awareness, encouraging them to return again and again to simplicity, mindfulness, and emotional release. In that returning, real peace is discovered, not as a reward, but as a natural state that was always present beneath the noise.